We begin with Senator Dianne Feinstein's office confirming more information about her health after a New York Times article. A spokesperson wrote in a statement, the senator previously disclosed that she had several complications related to her shingles diagnosis. As discussed in the New York Times article, those complications included Ramsay-Hunt syndrome and encephalitis. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. And Scott, earlier, you and I were both on the Hill. I had a chance to speak with California Congressman Ro Khanna, who has been calling on the senator to resign. That was before all of this new information came out. Let's take a listen.
It's a very sad situation. Anyone who saw her interaction the other day, she didn't know that she had been out for 3 months. I just think she's had a remarkable career. She's served honorably. It's time for people close to her to tell her to do the right thing and step aside.
But she says she is still committed to the interest of California, serving the people of California. Shouldn't she be allowed that opportunity?
She should if she could do the job, but I would just encourage people to view the interaction themselves. It was painful to watch when Senator Durbin is saying that he has to monitor the medical health every day, when other people who are close to her in the Senate are saying it's painful to watch. I just hope people close to her can ask her to do the dignified thing, celebrate her service, and step aside.
Scott, the congressman was referring to an interview that the senator did earlier this week where she stated that she had not been gone from Congress. How are her colleagues on the Hill processing all of these developments?
Yeah, we've spoken to a lot of her colleagues in the U.S. Senate, and what they're saying as this day and this evening moves along is that Ro Khanna is the clear exception, that most of the people who are saying Dianne Feinstein should leave, should resign or retire, are doing so under the cloak of anonymity or behind closed doors or in a whispered voice, and that her colleagues are publicly saying the opposite, that she should be given the autonomy and the power to decide her future. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana told me he still believes there's a double standard here, that these calls are coming because Dianne Feinstein is a woman, and that the same treatment wouldn't be given to an aging male senator. That notwithstanding, there's certainly a difference here. The narrow margin in the Judiciary Committee, the pivotal Judiciary Committee, and the narrow margin in the U.S. Senate overall makes this a pressing issue that Nicole really seems to be getting more sensitive with time. As the weeks go by, as more reports of her health come out, this is becoming more and more delicate, not just for her colleagues, but for the Capitol Hill community at large.
Well, I want to turn to the latest with Congressman George Santos. You caught up with him earlier today. What is he saying now that the GOP-controlled House has rejected his expulsion from Congress and instead referred this to the Ethics Committee?
His colleagues made it clear in the vote that they held Wednesday night that they're not going to allow his expulsion or a vote on his expulsion, and they're not going to call for him to resign in mass numbers. So the question becomes, Nicole, what lasts longer? This term in Congress for George Santos running through January 2025, or his federal criminal case, because there may be a shift in the sentiment of his Republican colleagues if there's a guilty plea or a conviction. So we asked George Santos if he's considering closing this criminal case before trial. Take a listen.
Any consideration of a plea agreement in your case?
I'm not discussing an ongoing investigation.
Is it odd to vote to refer yourself to the Ethics Committee yesterday?
No, it was the right thing to do. If you respect the process, you'll vote for the process.
Everything about George Santos as a congressman has been unorthodox, Nicole, including that vote last night where he very literally voted to refer himself to the Ethics Committee as part of a blocking of a vote to expel him. It's really just a different type of dynamic than we've seen, even from other members of Congress who've been charged by the feds.
And also, of course, another big story up there on the Hill, Speaker McCarthy sounding more optimistic now about the direction of debt limit talks. Democrats, though, are continuing to work on backup options. I want to take a listen to a couple of lawmakers on this issue of potentially invoking the 14th Amendment. As you know, some Democrats have been calling for that as yet another option. Here's what some of them had to say.
It's not an option, it's a requirement, and it hasn't been raised before because no Congress has ever tried to push the president to this point of essentially committing an act of legislative extortion.
It's just a way to avoid responsibility. Unfortunately, that happens a lot around here. we need to hold people accountable for doing their jobs, and that's just an attempt to make short shrift of their responsibility.
So obviously, Republicans like Senator Cornyn clearly opposed to this, but you do have a growing group of Democrats that's pushing this. I mean, bottom line, is this a viable option? And update us on where the debt limit negotiations stand.
Yeah, there are a growing number of Democratic senators who say use the 14th Amendment, put an end to this standoff. But one of those key senators, Ed Markey of Massachusetts, told me, finish the negotiations first. Let's see where those go, then invoke the powers of the 14th Amendment. Pretty big difference there, Nicole. Willing to have the discussions first before exercising what they say is a constitutional requirement by President Biden.
All right, Scott MacFarlane on Capitol Hill. We'll see how all of this plays out. Not a lot of time left, as you know, which means we'll both be very busy. Thanks so much.